Well, hey there, idiots. Welcome back to Observe. In today's video, we're going to be analyzing the nonverbal communication of someone known as Raygun. A lot of you probably saw this person in the media here recently. More on her story, kind of what's going on here in just a second. Let's go ahead and roll the intro first. So for those of you who do not know, Rachael Louise Gunn, better known by her competitive name, Raygun, was born on September 2nd of 1987 in Hornsby, New South Wales. She was involved in dance as a child. She was trained in ballroom, tap, and jazz styles, though in her adult life, she's an Australian academic and breakdancer. She currently teaches at university where she lectures in the departments of media, communication, creative arts, language, and literature. In the early 2010s, her boyfriend, later husband, who had been breakdancing for 10 years, convinced her to begin breaking. That being said, Gunn paused her breakdancing career to complete her PhD before returning to competitions in 2018. In 2022, Gunn ranked second in Australia's B-girl breakdancing scene, and by 2023, she had climbed to the top of the rankings. Over the past 5 to 10 years, she's consistently placed in the top 3 or even 1 at various breaking competitions across Australia. She also represented Australia at various world breaking championships in 2021 through 2023. Her big win came in 2023 when she took first place at the Oceania Breaking Championships, which earned her a spot in the 2024 Summer Olympics based on those qualifying rules. Gunn caught the media's attention when she competed at the Breaking 2024 Summer Olympics, which was the sport's first appearance in the Games. She received a score of 0 across the board in her match against 3 other competitors and didn't make it past the first round. After her performance, Gunn faced a wave of criticism and online bullying. At one point, a petition appeared on change.org calling for an investigation into her spot on the Australian Olympic team, but it was eventually taken down by the Australian Olympic Committee for spreading misinformation and defamatory claims. And that brings us to today's video. Gunn was featured in a segment recently uploaded by the Project YouTube channel. The interview not only covers her controversial performance during the Paris Olympics, but also the repercussions and backlash that she faced due to that appearance. Today, I'll be looking at her nonverbal communication to see what else might be revealed besides what she says verbally to us. I think that's enough of a backstory and all of the precursors and all of that. Let's go ahead and just start watching this. There's going to be segments of just a lot of information, so let's just dive in.
Representing Australia, Raygun.
Viewers questioned why she was chosen.
Yes, Rachel didn't get a point.
You've seen the one I'm talking about.
The athlete from down under that everyone is talking about and sure to be this year's most popular Halloween costume.
She showed some true Aussie spirit.
Suppose she had a crack.
Raygun had a crash.
How are you feeling since your performance?
Anyone see the breakdancing lady? It's so funny.
It was very cringy.
Cringy, yeah.
She is the best break dancer female that we have for Australia.
It's obviously hurting her.
I feel sorry for the athlete, and that should not happen in our world.
She feels, why are these people attacking me based on falsehood and mistruths?
Frankly, been pretty devastating.
Raygun.
Okay, gonna go ahead and pause here. So that's a little bit of like some of the flashes of the initial event, the competition, the dance that she carried out there. I saw it initially and I thought I agreed. I did think that it was cringy. It was a little hard to watch. It didn't fit with the styles of what everybody else was. And many people have been talking and critiquing her performance, whether or not it was actually technically efficient, if this was just a different style, if she was diluted and just believed herself to be something that she wasn't. There's a whole slew of different opinions on the internet around this. And that little montage that was put together there by the project does kind of summarize the media response to it. I have a lot of questions in regards to the other competitions, but I was not able to track down footage or interviews regarding those competitions where she placed in 3rd place or higher, sometimes even winning. So I am left with some questions in regards to that, but now we're going to actually start into this interview and start seeing what we can and understanding a little bit about the psychology behind Gunn's performance and her perception of the world. Let's go ahead and just start watching that.
Hey Gunn, thanks very much for joining us.
How are you doing?
Yeah, it's been a pretty wild ride. I'm not going to lie. I definitely have my ups and downs, my good and bad.
So something that I want to be able to start off with non-verbally that I'm noticing with her, when she starts off speaking, she starts to lean back ever so lightly in her chair and tuck her chin a bit. Now that leaning back is creating some separation, and tucking of the chin is a defensive gesture. If you see somebody tucking their chin, evolutionarily speaking, there's a lot of vulnerability and important things in your neck. In case you weren't aware of that,
Your neck's important, be careful with it.
so evolutionarily speaking, when we're feeling defensive, we'll tuck our chins a little bit, or we'll hunch our shoulders, anything to kind of protect that area. So we're seeing that initially start off, which kind of gives us an idea as to what her emotional state is going into this. She's probably feeling on a level defensive, especially considering the fact that there has been a massive outpouring of fairly distasteful responses to her. And we'll talk a little bit about that as this goes on.
Good and bad days, but it has been honestly so amazing to see the positive response to my performance. Like, I never thought that I would be able to
Okay, so when she starts talking about it, it's been so amazing to see the positive response. We're starting to see more agitation creep throughout the rest of her body as she starts to move and shift around, and she needs to calm herself down in various ways. I can't really see her hands below the frame of the camera, so we can't see if she's doing any self-soothing gestures like on her thighs, something along those lines to really indicate that agitation. But we do start to see a lot of fidgeting around. She also does a pretty substantial eye-blocking blink in there. It's a prolonged blink where she's shaking her head big and broad as she's saying. It's been really surprising the amount of positive that has come through it. So with that, verbally speaking, we understand that she's trying to take this and have a positive outlook on it. Non-verbally speaking, we're seeing that perhaps that's not the part that's affecting her most, as she's trying to say here. With that blocking and that agitation creeping in there, the big, broad nose shake that we see in there is so big and broad, it's likely related to the you wouldn't believe or the unbelievable nature of what she's saying. So that lines up. She's even saying it's been unbelievable, how positive, blah, blah, blah. So that all makes sense, but I am questioning whether or not she's really feeling the positives more so than the negatives right now. Even just psychologically speaking, it's much more easy to hyper-focus in on and obsess on the negatives rather than the positives, and her nonverbal communication is still kind of pushing us in that direction. We're making note of these things. Let's keep watching.
To connect with so many people in such a positive way. So that has been just so amazing. But yeah, it definitely has been tough at times. Yeah.
Yeah, I can well imagine. How dark did it get for you?
Fortunately, I got some mental health support pretty quickly, and I also went off social media. I went off the internet, but it's pretty up and down, but it's also just hard to process it all, honestly. Like, it's just still pretty hard to process.
Okay, so with that, I do believe that she did end up seeking that mental health support that she mentioned there. That's also pretty important to do. The most wrong thing that she did here, I feel, is perhaps create a dance routine that was not up to the caliber and skill level of the people around her. I don't believe on any level in any world or imaginative realm that that deserves the amount of hatred and backlash that she's gotten for that. This also isn't the first time that the internet has seen a dance and ragged on it only to later embrace those moves and it become a huge pop culture thing, possibly because of the irony of it, but then there are many people who are just doing it because they don't understand that it came from somebody who was being made fun of. So I sense a little bit of that happening even with Raygun, but back onto this side of things, let's just continue watching to see what she displays here.
It became such a global storm. How much of it were you aware of?
Not a lot, actually, because as soon as I finished, my rounds, my media liaison from the AOC said, "Oh, there's a bit of a storm brewing on social media. You might want to go off socials." And I was like, "Oh."
Okay, so during that time where she's saying not a lot, actually, she has some pretty micro movements of her head shaking no. I would believe that that seems to be synchronized. I don't think that she hopped onto the social media and was just pouring over videos and tweets and everything about her performance. Sorry, not tweets,
X posts.
Because we all love that. So all of her X posts or anything like that, I feel like she did probably detach. And right as she's saying that she finished her rounds, she does a pretty substantial dry swallow in there. That's an indicator of nerves, and that does precursor what she says shortly thereafter with her media liaison being like, hey, let's not hop onto there. There's some stuff going on. It might be rough for you to see. So that does all make sense. So far, I haven't seen anything from her that seems to be deceitful or very forced outside of that. Like, oh, I'm surprised by how overwhelmingly positive things have been. That part seemed a little iffy. Let's continue on through this.
I was like, oh, okay. I didn't understand the scale of it. And then I did, preview some comments and I was like, oh no. And I've this kind of sick feeling started coming out. I was like, oh goodness, what has happened?
The immediate aftermath must have been hard. I mean, there's that famous footage of Australian journalists running after you while you're walking down the street.
Have you got a message for the people who've been writing stuff online, guys?
It must have been unlike anything you've ever experienced before.
People have been unfair about your performance?
What was that moment like?
That was really wild. So that was the next day. I was actually calling my media liaison going, these people are chasing me. What do I do? But that really did put me in a state of panic for a while after that. And I was quite nervous being out in public because I just didn't know.
I'm gonna go pause here. She's nervous now. You can see on occasion as she's gesturing, it's pretty hard to say because she's moving her hands around a fair bit, but in the moments that it's still, you can see the ever so light fluttering of her nerves causing her to shake a bit. And then you're also seeing some manipulators in there. Then even down here, she puts her hands down. You can see her manipulating her pants or her dress, whatever she's wearing. And all of these gestures are indicating a fairly intense level of agitation, which does make sense contextually, even for the reason for this big interview that she's doing. It's all making sense so far. Let's just continue on through it.
What was safe, if anyone was going to recognize me, if, how they were going to respond to seeing me. And it was pretty nerve-wracking for a while.
A lot of open palm gestures, palms upwards. These are submissive gestures. She's probably feeling on some level a little helpless. And that's where you'll see a lot of these whenever a person's not feeling as in control of a situation, palms can start coming upwards more and more. So we're seeing that come in. It's also kind of mixed in with some shrugs in there as well. She's looking off to the sides regularly as she's thinking about various things or recalling various things. If you're here on the channel regularly, we do not buy into the full reliability of directional eye cues. They can be relied upon for an individual basis if you establish that in their baseline. I haven't done so with her, so I'm not going to be using her looking off to the side for whether or not she is recollecting genuine or forced or faked various sensory inputs. If she's looking off to the side, it's more likely related to the processing or thinking side of things. The University of Rochester established through AI pattern finding that when a person looks off to the side and perhaps narrows their eyes ever so slightly, that breaking of eye contact looking off to the side is regularly found in genuine recollection. So as she's doing that, I am pushed to believe that. Regardless, let's keep watching this.
For a while there, yeah.
I think the moment where I thought, okay, this is wild, this is now out of control, was when I saw the sketch on Jimmy Fallon. And it's just, what was going through your mind when that happened?
All right, gonna go ahead and pause there. It mentions the sketch of Jimmy Fallon, and immediately we see two primary emotions flash across her face there and linger for a bit. It's a mixture between contempt and disgust, which for those of you who haven't been watching this channel regularly in the past or haven't heard it elsewhere, contempt is the feeling of moral or intellectual superiority. And then the other side of things is disgust. You're starting to see the activity in the corners of her nose. That one's pretty straightforward. She has a level of disdain or disgust towards that, and it's mixed with some contempt. We're seeing some things slipping out there. I think we're getting an understanding of how Gunn presents herself specifically in these media contexts like this. Let's continue watching it.
Mixed emotions, I think. I don't know whether to hug him or yell at him because what a platform he ended up giving me, honestly. I haven't actually seen the sketch because I don't think I'm in a place yet to watch it, but I will watch it at some point. And, you know, a few different people have kind of explained it to me and given me different takes on it. But I am still in the process of being able to describe how I feel about all this stuff, because it kind of feels like a really weird dream that I've been having that I'm going to wake up from at any moment. Like, what is life right now?
What about?
What I'm fascinated by Gunn's approach, what fascinates me about her approach, is that she's not allowing herself to sit in the negative emotion or negative repercussion of what has happened or occurred online. She's not trying to manipulate us into feeling sorry for her. It seems as though she is just trying to state how things have been and keep it in a fairly positive light. That, to me, indicates a level of her understanding of media and how to interact in these sorts of situations. With pack mindsets, when people sense a weakness in somebody who is already being attacked, it oftentimes opens up the door for an even more intense attack. In this, if she had shown up and she was really sobbing or crying or bemoaning her state, it would have had the opposite effect as to what she would probably want. I'm assuming she doesn't want more attack and more online bullying, but if she had shown how difficult it had been for her psychologically, it would have likely triggered more of that. If you want even examples in nature of this, if you have chickens, if you ever raised chickens, back when I grew up on the farm, I used to have chickens. And if chickens see another chicken with blood, they will attack that chicken and oftentimes even kill it because of seeing that blood. Humans will react rather similarly. If they see blood, they'll attack. And so with her not allowing people to more or less see blood, this is her creating a shell around herself. So it is just showing some understanding of media, of social interactions in regards to that, which makes sense with her education and what she does. Regardless, let's continue on.
What about the performance itself? Have you watched that back?
I haven't watched it back, no. That's not unusual for me, though. I'm not great at watching back my battles.
So she does sit back a little bit. Again, I haven't watched it back, no, and the manipulators start to increase. This makes sense again if she has attributed a very negative emotion to that entire scenario. Any form of nonverbal distancing does make contextual sense. That all being said, let's just continue watching the video.
Well, it's been a month, Rachel. It's still going to take me some time, I think. I think I've seen little bits and pieces, but yeah, I'll watch it eventually.
So what fascinates me verbally about what I just noticed there is that she has a level of self-awareness that many people seem to believe that she doesn't have, especially due to how she performed in regards to the other people. But even with that, as she's saying, I don't like to watch my battles back very quickly after they're done. And then she's like, it's been a while, Rachel. She even does a talk to herself, acknowledging that it has been a period of time since this actual incident. And so she does have this level of self-awareness that I think people are questioning on some level. Regardless, let's keep watching through this.
You eventually did speak out about the backlash to your performance on a social media post.
I'm glad I was able to bring some joy into your lives. That's what I hoped. I didn't realize that that would also open the door to so much hate.
What did you have in mind there?
During the little first initial clip of that phone reaction response that she did there, you see a bit of micro nose shakes throughout that and some prolonged blinking as she's stating her case. And to me, that feels like it's a desynchronization point. I don't necessarily buy what she's saying there about the positivity of everything. Again, it feels as though perhaps she's just presenting that side of things to present more of an unassailable wall to the various media outlets. Regardless, let's keep watching.
It was really sad how much hate that it did evoke. And a lot of the responses, though, is also just due to people not being very familiar with breaking and the diversity of approaches in breaking. And it was so fantastic that the next day, the judging chair, MG, came out and explained that, you know, in the breaking community, what I did actually wasn't very shocking, you know, and, you know, awful responses, not only attacking me, but attacking my husband, attacking my crew, attacking the breaking and street dance community in Australia, my family. The energy and vitriol that people had was pretty alarming.
In the aftermath of your...
All right, so this is the first little glimpse of her acknowledging the negatives fully. And this is the area, again, where for me, especially having been on the internet for a little bit, I get a little tired of seeing how extremely hateful groups of people can be towards people who do something that's, in realistic terms, broad terms, pretty inconsequential, regardless of your personal opinions. When it really boils down to it, it's one small fleshy being was doing a dance that some other fleshy beings didn't like, and so everybody's upset. When you look at it in that light, it's a fairly silly thing to be dying on the hill of. But I also understand that a lot of people hold a lot of value to dance, and a lot of their own personal value is held in the realms of dancing that they go to, and so there's a lot of complexities that go into this. I don't know. I don't personally feel that this is something that the internet needs to be up in arms about. It is fascinating that she made it into the Paris Olympics, into the world global competition of dance with what she performed with. But it is also what it is. But that's not where we are yet, so let's just keep going through this.
In the aftermath of your performance, it got pretty wild, actually. There were all kinds of conspiracy theories going on.
Gunn, who set up her own governing body for breakdancing, has manipulated the selection process.
Raygun's husband was the judge that got her through.
Coach of the national team and the team selector.
Unsurprisingly, they run a qualifier that gets 15 entrants, and Raygun is selected.
An online petition gathered more than 50,000 signatures questioning her selection and calling for an investigation.
How did you feel when you saw those?
Yeah, the conspiracy theories were just...
There we go. There's a little bit more of the true, genuine, full disgust and dismissal. We're seeing the eye blinks, then the eye roll in there that indicates that dismissiveness, and we're also seeing the disgust in the corner of the nose as she's starting to talk about it. There's the nose shake indicating a negative emotion. That's a synchronized pocket of nonverbal communication that lets us know that she does have a level of disgust towards the conspiracy theory side of things, and that seems to be fairly supported by the fact that even the Olympics, the committees involved in that came out and shut down that petition. It feels like perhaps this was who they had available. I don't know if maybe no other people stepped up. It seems unlikely, and I have to wrestle with it as well, because even for my opinion, I don't feel like she portrayed the level of technical capabilities that some of the other competitors did. She says she won, right? Won all these other competitions. I could neither confirm nor deny those. But if that's the case, it seems as though perhaps this is just who the Olympics landed on. Regardless, let's keep watching on through. She's disgusted by it. Let's see.
Were just awful. That was upsetting, because it wasn't just people that, you know, didn't understand breaking and were just angry about my performance. It was people that are now attacking our reputation and our integrity. And look,
she has another pretty substantial, you can hear it, doesn't show it, you can hear the dry swallow again right before she's saying her performance. And for it to be picked up over a lav mic like this and be able to still be heard so clearly, that's a pretty substantial gulp. That does indicate a pretty substantial pop of agitation in regards to that nervousness, and it's again directly related to her stating her performance. She has a lot of anxiety still centered around that. Makes sense contextually. Anyways, let's continue.
Look, you know, none of them were grounded in any kind of facts, and obviously, you know, they're still circulating. People still don't believe the truth, but we do live in a different world now, so I think that's just going to be part of, you know, our reality, unfortunately.
That missing
fell apart there verbally as well. She has no certainty or confidence in what she's saying throughout this area, as indicated by the upwards turnings of her words. Each one is placed into a question. This is how it is, and this is where things are being. And so that uncertainty is creeping into her pitch and tone. Along with that, the cadence of her words has dropped off dramatically. She can speak fairly fluidly and continually, as we've seen throughout the rest of this interview. But then when it comes to this part, it's starting to break up a lot. There's a lot of you knows in there, and these are all these indicators that she doesn't have a lot of certainty in this. So for me, that feels questionable why this amount of uncertainty pops up here. Perhaps this is her actual negative emotion really showing through, and that's why we're seeing all of this difficulty with her verbal pacing and patterns. But regardless, this is just a little bit more information that we can glean from this entire interview. So let's try to take it and keep going on forward with it.
That misinformation has been addressed by the AOC, by Ausbreaking, by the World Dance Sport Federation, but let's hear it from you. How did you qualify for the Paris 2024 Olympics?
I won the Oceania Championships.
As simple as that.
Yeah, it was a direct qualifier. Yeah.
And did you know anyone who was involved in making the selection or any of the judges?
There were 9 judges, all from overseas. I don't think any of them have judged anything that I'd been in before. I was, super nervous about it, to be honest, because even though I'd won all these competitions in Australia, I was nervous about winning this one because it was all new judges.
Well, one of the
Fascinated. Okay, so he asked, did you know any of the judges? Again, we're going to assume that she did win the competition that has been mentioned here. It seems to be on record. She did seem to win that competition. It leaves me wondering how those competitions went that she won. Perhaps there's more to her repertoire than what we saw. But regardless, saying that she did win those competitions, as she's going through and responding to the did you know any of them, she doesn't say, no, I didn't know any of them. She starts by saying there were 9 judges that were overseas and none of them had judged my competitions before, which is a dodging of that question. During that time as well, we see that manipulator come in where she's fiddling with the back of her clothing. That preening or self-soothing gesture that pops up there is again an indicator of agitation and nerves. Why would she be calming herself down during a time where she also just dodged a question? Strikes me as fascinating. Perhaps there was somebody that she knew on the board of things. Maybe that had something to do with it. Difficult to really say, especially since all of these different entities have come forward and said that that wasn't the case. So it's fascinating. Her nonverbal communication seems to be saying one thing, whereas everybody else seems to be saying another thing. Leaves me with questions. Let's continue watching.
Well, one of those judges from New Zealand was speaking actually in your defence in explaining what had happened, and he said this.
All us judges talked about how she was going to get smashed, absolutely smashed.
I mean, it's fairly stark. Did you know it was going to be rough?
Yeah, I knew my chances were slim. As soon as I qualified, I was like, oh my gosh, what have I done? Because I knew that I was going to get beaten and I knew that people were not going to understand my style and what I was going to do.
Okay, so that gives us a little bit of an understanding then. Again, apparently her style is just how she portrayed herself in the Olympics, which I don't understand how the competitions before went then. I would be curious to see those, but the initial response to that judge making that statement, her response is to have a pretty overt laugh that doesn't fully reach her eyes, letting us know that that was a very forced fake laugh, and likely a laugh to conceal genuine discomfort or psychological pain that she underwent because of hearing that. That's a pretty harsh thing to hear from a judge that admitted you into a competition, letting us know again, she's trying to put on this polished, I feel okay and things are going pretty okay on camera and in these interviews. Realistically speaking, I'm gonna bet it has not been that okay in the background. But then even with that, she indicates again a level of self-awareness of knowing that going into this, she expected that she wasn't going to win. What I find fascinating is that she doesn't say that she's not gonna win because of her skill level. She says that she's not going to win because nobody understands or will understand what she's doing. And that is one of the things that I've seen tossed around a little bit more that I feel might be more valid, is that she might have an overinflated opinion of her own skill level, and that it's difficult for her to accept that perhaps she wasn't as skilled as the other dancers, and that's why she didn't win, as opposed to everybody else just didn't understand her dancing, and that's why she didn't win. So there is perhaps that level of denial that she has, and that could even just be a point of self-protection and preservation at this point. It might be harder for her to accept that she doesn't have that skill level because everything else might become too overwhelming. So we're just piecing some things together here. Let's continue watching.
I wanted to bring out some Australian moves and themes. You know, I love our Olympic mascot, BK, the boxing kangaroo, and I wanted to show that. And That's the wonderful thing about breaking. You can take inspiration from any source. I had to go with what I was good at. I had to go with my strengths. So, we had, the odds were against me. That's for sure.
A lot of the breaking community seems to.
So that's also reaffirming that is her dance style. Again, leaves me questioning the other competitions. But she's falling back very regularly on this is what she does, this is how she's always done it, and it's worked for her before. And then because of that, it must mean that it's not because of her skill level, it's because of misunderstanding of artistic expression that has caused her to lose this interaction, this battle, this whole whole media storm. So it's fascinating to see that portion of her psychology continually coming out here. Let's continue on through.
Seems to have fallen in behind you. You want it fair and square, you're one of theirs. There was, however, some criticism from that community. I think it's fair to give you the chance to respond to it. For example, a quote from a breaker and a bit of a hip-hop legend in Australia called Spice, who says, I feel like it's just pushed our scene in Australia into the dark ages. It made a mockery of the Australian scene, and I think that's why a lot of us are hurting. In hip-hop, we have this thing. You step up or you step off. You need to know your place. Is there any merit in those criticisms?
Woo-wee! Okay, so there was a pile of emotional display going on from Gunn throughout the entirety of that reading of that quote. And that's a pretty scathing review to hear from somebody else in the field, especially somebody who has a name for themselves in that field. And as it's going through, we're seeing the processing of surprise. We're seeing disgust slip in at times. We're seeing lip compressions come in. We're seeing breaking off to the side. We're seeing raising of eyebrows, lowering of eyebrows. Throughout the entirety of that, there's so much emotional display that we're able to at least gather that hit a level of emotional nerve for Gunn that perhaps these other less reliable or less credible sources or accusations have been coming from. Not very hurtful to hear somebody who knows nothing about breakdancing say something hateful, but to have somebody who knows something about breakdancing say something so scathing, that is hard for a person's psyche to be able to take in, and it shows very clearly throughout that segment there. She does still try to keep that fairly positive front face on it, but even though we have this thin veil of positivity that she's giving, we're seeing a lot of that negativity bubbling underneath throughout those tells that we just mentioned a second ago. Let's keep watching.
Yeah, look, it is really sad to hear those criticisms. And I am very sorry for the backlash that.
A lot of swallowing in there. A lot of the happiness has fully melted away from her face. She's not really trying to put on the positivity in this point. A lot of looking down into the side that's indicative of shame. So perhaps we're seeing this agitation, nervousness, and shame creeping out here in regards to that statement. Again, that makes sense contextually with what she would likely be feeling in this situation. It still seems as though she's pushing for this misinterpretation of art rather than a lack of skill. Let's see.
Backlash that the community has experienced, but I can't control how people react. Unfortunately, we just need some more resources in Australia for us to have a chance to beat world champions. Historically, unfortunately, we haven't had the best track record of winning world championships. So, I don't think that's just on me. But in the last year, I have trained my hardest. I have trained so hard. Learning power moves in your mid-30s is not easy. Let's just say that. So I have really, put my body through it, put my mind.
Okay, so during this time, she's starting to smile and laugh more, but a big primary gesture that we're seeing are the palms forward, defensiveness again, as she's saying, put my body through it. It's oftentimes seen as people want to calm somebody down or calm a group down, any form of pacification. In regards to their own actions, this defensiveness will come out. And so we're seeing that come out very primarily there, and that makes sense again contextually. Let's continue on through.
Put my mind through it. So, but if that's not good enough for someone, what can I say?
Well, you're an academic and you write in this area. And in one of your papers, actually, you wrote about how breaking is something that emerged.
Fascinating. So during this time, there wasn't really a reason for her to do a pretty substantial self-soothing gesture, but she still did one back here where she had done that one earlier. And it looked as if she was trying to perhaps tug and adjust her clothing. Perhaps something is sitting a little weirdly for her, and that is the reason for that. A lot of the times also, to be able to make note of it though, people will start to be more hyper aware of how ill-fitting clothing is when they're feeling a level of psychological duress. Everything becomes more overwhelming. All sensory input becomes more overwhelming. You could even think of this yourself. If you're feeling confused by something or frustrated by something, and then a lot of noise happens, or somebody's touching you a lot, or any sort of environmental stimulus starts to increase, it can become very overwhelming very quickly. And so perhaps that's still the case here. This entire interview is pushing her to just be more hyper aware of the sensory input that's coming into her body. It is a possibility. It doesn't exclude the fact that it is still in response to nervousness and possible agitation as well. So that all being said, let's just keep watching.
Thing that emerges from marginalised communities, especially racially marginalised ones, and that the danger is when you turn it into a sport, you can actually end up excluding those very communities. Now, there have been some people who've noted that, you know, this turned into an Olympic sport. Australia puts up a B-girl and it ends up being a white woman instead of someone from those marginalised communities.
Interesting. He says a white woman, and she does a no shake, and a little smile of contempt comes into the one side of her face there. She has a level of moral or intellectual superiority, again, in regards to that, which at least lets us know while watching this that whatever she's going to say is going to be a rebuttal to that. It's not going to be an ingredient to that. There's going to be a level of pushback that she gives. Let's see how that plays out.
Do you think there is an irony there that's fair to comment upon?
Yeah, look, it's there's a number of white B-girls in Australia, actually. I don't know what it is about us white women and being attracted to breaking. So, you know, I think even if it went to the second or third, it still would have been a white B-girl representing.
A lot of looking off to the side, some insecurity coming in there, a lot of shifting around. And again, we're hearing more of an excuse again of this. Well, that's just how everybody is there. That's the selection of talent that you have, or is just white women in Australia, which who knows? I, for one, don't know really anything about the breakdancing scene in Australia. So perhaps that's true. Perhaps that's just what the talent pool is. It could be the case. I don't know. It seems as though, to me, she's still making somewhat of an excuse and trying to dodge a question rather than fully acknowledging it. Regardless, not too weighty here nor there, so let's just keep watching.
I don't know, like when the Olympics, you know, when it was announced that we had the Oceania qualifier, there was a lot of people in the scene personally reaching out to people to get them to sign up, you know, and to get them involved. That's something that we're always reflecting on. How can we get more people into breaking? That's something that we're always thinking about, to be honest.
Right, sure. Do you genuinely think you are the best female breaker in Australia?
Well, I think my record speaks to that. You know, I was the top ranked Australian B-girl in 2020 and 2020.
So during the initial portions of this, what I wanted to pay attention to is if I would catch any micro shakes no in there that could be indicative of her feeling that she's not. And I didn't see that. I see a little head dip in there. I see a shrug in there, and those both are indicating perhaps a level of defensiveness, again, as I've mentioned before. And then she goes on to say, well, I mean, I think that my record speaks for itself, which to us lets us know that she does indeed feel like she is the best female breakdancer in Australia, as indicated by her record. Perhaps that's true. Perhaps that is how things have played out. I have a little difficulty buying that, but she does at least believe that from what we're seeing nonverbally. Let's continue.
2022 and 2023, I've been invited to represent at how many world championships, Paris, Korea, you know, so the record is there, but anything can happen in a battle. You know, it's always about what happens on the day. That consistency shows, you know, my level, so.
All right. Take me to that closing ceremony when all your fellow Olympians got around you.
It was just crazy. Like, I was feeling pretty anxious that day. You know, it was all kind of affecting me a bit more and was weighing on me a bit more. And I wasn't sure if I was even going to go to the closing ceremony. And it was just so nice to have the support of all the other Olympians there. And they really, you know, supported me. They understood, you know, that I went out there and I gave it my all. And it wasn't just like, we support you. It was like, you're a legend. Let's have fun, you know, let's celebrate. And then someone's like, do the kangaroo. And so we were doing it. I never thought that would happen. Like, oh my gosh, totally wild. And the Australians were just all cheering. And that was just like, so like, it so warmed my heart.
The irony of this is that you are perhaps the most famous Olympian of the Paris 2024 Olympic Games worldwide. I mean, is there an upside to all this?
The upside is you get random people contacting you that you never thought would ever notice you. You know, and it's not just like breakers that you've respected for, you know, a decade. It's someone like Sir Richard Branson calling you to say that he enjoyed your performance and he thought that it was plucky and courageous and fun. And, you know, he would love to, you know, do something with me and have me on some cruises with Boy George. Like, what is life? I don't know.
Okay. So that part, okay, I do find it fascinating that the positive that's have come out of this that she's feeling is not like, oh, well, it's brought more exposure to breakdancing in Australia. It's brought more global exposure to breakdancing. It's not that it's opened up the doors for people that don't feel like they might have the technical skill to compete, to have the bravery to try to do so. It's nothing along those lines. It's a fairly intrinsic positive feeling that she's speaking about how things have affected her positively. And then at the very end, it just feels uncomfortable because she tries to wrap up and the interviewer just continues to kind of sit there silently, which leads to this fake laughter from everybody trying to just laugh and wrap it up. It feels uncomfortable for me. It's all the body language is desynchronized and I'm about to crawl out of my skin watching that portion, but we've only got a little bit left here, so let's try to get through it.
Do you think there's any more breaking in your future?
I don't think I'll be competing for a while. Not really wanting to be in the spotlight, breaking, competing. But you know, it's been nice. Like, it's been a bit of a process to try and start dancing again. That's actually been tough. You know, it was my medicine and then it turned into my source of stress. I'm really happy that it gets to go back to being my medicine. I can kind of finally feel free again. So it's, yeah, I'm looking forward to breaking, but no, I don't think I'll compete for a while.
Yeah. You speak of the positives, though, of the experience. Those positives, do you think that...
Just going to go ahead and pause there, make note. I mean, that is fair. And to me, on some level, this is where it feels more sad. And I feel a level of sympathy for Gunn during this, is that she's dealing with something that she obviously had passion for, she appreciated, loved doing, and felt like she was doing pretty well at. And then introduced it to the world and the world did not take it well. And so then you're kind of stuck seeing this person, again, it's just another human being on the earth with a hobby that they ended up having ruined by a decent torrential onslaught from the media. So that part to me is sad, to see somebody lose a passion because of the negative feedback from other people. I think that it's good that she's been able to kind of retake that into a personal level and make it something that is more of a hobby again, that's not in the limelight. It's not being highlighted by anybody. She's not going to competitions. It's just going to be her own thing. And that also is obviously a level of self-preservation, as if she did go into these competitions, there would be a much different level of publicity about that, and more people would be interested in that, and likely interested in that for the sake of still continuing to be hateful or hurtful in that. So it's a flip-sided coin. It's unfortunately not really a happy one on either side, but it does make sense with what has actually occurred and what everybody experienced here. So let's finish this up.
Positives. Do you think they're the things that are going to pull you through?
Yeah, I'll survive. I'm all right. The positives are just amazing.
I would rather much focus on the positives out of this and the positive responses and the joy that I've brought people. It's going out there and just having fun and going as hard as you can in the face of, you know, losing.
Okay, and so that's where that wraps up. And I mean, honestly, that's a good thing. Just go out and enjoy your hobbies and your passions and do them because you enjoy doing them and make them as fun as they can be for you and really revel in that because life is filled with plenty of things that can be bad. So try to find those points for yourself that allow you to feel better and allow you to have that happiness and excitement and creative passion in and of yourself and not have it be dependent on people around you, what other people say or think or feel or do. And so I support that. My entire synopsis of this is that it seems as though Raygun might on some level be in denial about her full capabilities and technical skill in regards to breaking. But I also very much feel that the amount of vitriol that has been inflamed on the internet and in the media in general is not at all proportional to what occurred. What are your thoughts? Just let me know in the comments below. Also, along with that in the comments, let me know if there are any other videos or interviews or subjects that you would like me to cover. I know that October is right around the corner, and with that will come some spooky season stuff. So if you have some requests in regards to that, get them into the comments now and hopefully I'll be able to get around to them. If you did like this video, hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to be able to support the channel a little bit more than just subscribing and hitting the like button, I have my memberships open and my Patreon. Sometimes I'm able to upload some very specific member only or Patreon only content that kind of gives you a little bit for that extra donation that you're giving. But a lot of the times it just kind of serves as like a little tip for me for doing videos. And I do appreciate it because it helps keep this channel going. So thank you to those of you who already are members and patrons. You help an immense amount for everybody watching. Even if you're not able to become a member or if you don't even feel like liking or subscribing, I just appreciate you watching. I hope you have a great rest of your day. But without further ado, that's all that I've got for the day. My name is Logan and you have been oh so awesome as you always are. And I will see you in the next video. Cheers, guys.